Well, g'day and welcome to the Choosing Your Uni National Virtual Expo. I'm your host for this session, Rob Malicki, and welcome to this session on the Federation University of Australia. Now, before I get started, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I live and work, and that's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation here in Sydney. And before I get started, I'd like to tell you what's coming up. So for those of you who are watching on the live stream, thank you for joining me live. You can drop your questions and comments into the chat, regardless of whether you're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Drop them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them during this session. If we don't get to them during this session, you can also, in fact, I'll go and make sure that they're available inside the Choosing Your Uni Discord for the Virtual Expo, and every question will get answered inside the Discord. And for those of you who are watching along on the replay, you can also ask any questions that you have, whether they're really specific about your personal case or they're really broad. You can ask those in the Choosing Your Uni Discord too. And finally, if you are a parent, we have a Facebook community just for you to ask your particular questions. Details about all those things down in the session description below. Now, this whole virtual expo wouldn't be possible without the support of our presenting sponsor, Southern Cross University. So a super quick word from them, and then we're going to get right into the session.
One day soon, I'm going to be the boss.
And I'm going to teach and empower the next generation.
One day soon, I'll use science to save the planet.
And one day soon, I'll save lives.
Right now, I'm ready to take the first step.
No matter what your goal, choose a pathway at Southern Cross University to transform your future.
So what are we going to be going through in the next 20 minutes? Well, firstly, we're going to be talking about what Fed University is known for and what kind of student would be well suited to studying there. We're also going to hear about its academic strengths, how it ranks, and we're going to dive into the hard data of things like student satisfaction, graduate employment rates, salaries, and rankings. And I'm going to be really straight with you about what those actually mean, how you can interpret that data to help decide whether or not Federation University, often called simply Fed Uni, if Fed Uni is the right institution for you. And finally, I love that section too. It's about me giving you some alternatives to maybe consider that, other universities that are similar to Fed in different ways. And we'll get to that towards the end of this session. Let's jump into Fed University and start by thinking about who might be well suited to studying there. But firstly, here's a stat that might surprise you. Half the students at Federation University are the first in their family to have gone to university. Like not 10%, not a quarter, but literally half. And that's the highest rate of any university in the country. So what kind of student would be well suited to studying at Fed? Well, maybe let's look at who wouldn't be suited to studying there for starters. And obviously, if you are looking for a big city campus with 50,000 students that's buzzing, there's nightlife on the doorstep and all kinds of activity of the inner city, Fed Uni is probably not for you. It's probably also not for you if you're really obsessed about rankings and going to like an incredibly prestigious institution. If having like a big brand name on your resume is something that's really interesting to you, then yeah, it probably doesn't tick that box either. And it's also probably not for you if you really want to keep your options wide open. You want to figure out what you're interested in over a few years of broad study and then maybe niche down into some subject area. Fed Uni is really built around getting into the workplace fast, getting a good academic qualification and then getting a job. So if you want small classes where your lecturers actually know your name, if you want serious work experience built right into the degree, and I'm going to talk heaps about that, this is such an important element of Fed Uni, we'll get to that. And if you are the kind of person who doesn't need a sandstone building to tell you that education actually matters, then stick around, because this is definitely an institution that's worth you having a look at. So let me give you 3 things that I think really define Federation University, and these may help you to start to understand whether or not this institution is for you. First and foremost, and I just alluded to it, it's the cooperative education model. Now, this is the academic thing that Fed Uni hangs its hat on, and honestly, it is genuinely distinctive from every other university in the country. And the idea is this: every undergraduate, and of course undergraduates are students doing their first degrees, so it's called a bachelor's degree or an undergraduate. Every undergraduate student and every undergraduate degree includes at least 60 days of credited workplace experience. And the university pushes for those placements to be paid. This is truly unique. This is not, 2 weeks of observation in a workplace where you stand around and make coffee and stand in the corner and look on. This is months of real workplace experience that's assessed as part of your degree. Fed Uni is rolling this out across all of their degree programs, and it means that Fed University graduates walk into job interviews with something connected and concrete on their CV that almost every other graduate doesn't have. Now, quick aside, if you've been watching different sessions and you're trying to figure out what your next career move is, I've got a great session on designing your ultimate career and how to get started on these sort of things. Details are in the session description below. Now, the second thing about Fed Uni that I think is pretty unique is the fact that it's got this culture that is built around people who haven't necessarily got that background or family history of going to university. When half your student body is first in family, that really changes the atmosphere. There's less of the unspoken, everybody here already kind of knows how it works, it was kind of guaranteed I'd go to uni. Less of that kind of energy that you might get at sort of bigger institutions. And what that means is that the support systems, things like their Fed Ready transition program and the Ask Academic Skills service, aren't just afterthoughts that are bolted on. They're actually core to the way the place operates. Also, and this is a big one for me, the student to teacher ratio is rated number 1 in Victoria in the Good Universities Guide. What does that mean in practical terms? What it means is that you're not sitting in a gigantic lecture hall with 400 other people where you're pretty much just a number, wondering if anyone here actually knows you exist. At Fed University, class sizes are smaller, significantly smaller than some of the other institutions, meaning you definitely get more of that one-on-one attention. And that's really important, and I think it shows up in some of the statistics that we'll discuss later on. Third, Fed Uni is what we call a dual sector institution. There's only a handful of them around Australia. And what it means is that Fed Uni is both a university, but also teaches vocational level programs such as diplomas through TAFE. So these things sit right alongside each other. And so if you're not sure whether you want to do a trade qualification or a TAFE level, business diploma, or a degree, what Fed allows you to do is to start in vocational ed, to start at TAFE, and then work your way through into a full degree. These pathways are already built. And that's a real advantage for certain types of students. And if you're interested in how government support works for both TAFE and uni students, we've got a great session on Australian government support. That was on the first day of the Virtual Expo, and you'll find the details in the description below, down in the session catalogue. I reckon dual sector institutions have an enormous advantage for particular types of students. So you really should be looking at them. Some of the other dual sector institutions, and a lot of them are in Victoria, Swinburne, RMIT, and in Queensland you've got CQ University. So there are a number of them around, and they're really worth a look. If you're not sure if uni's for you, a dual sector could give you that lead in from TAFE through to university. Let's think about Federation University's campus network, because it does have a number of institutions spread throughout Victoria. Of course, we've got the main Ballarat campus, and Gippsland is also a major campus, plus there's a suburban campus at Berwick in Melbourne's southeast. One that you might not be aware of is there's a very small Brisbane campus, which focuses in on a few niche professional degrees. And what I think is interesting is that geographic spread is a feature of the institution, it's not a bug. What I think it means is that the institution is genuinely embedded in the communities that it serves. However, it does mean that your experience will be very different depending on which campus you end up at. Of course, depending on where you live, it can also be an incredible advantage because you can access an institution like Fed Uni, whether you're in Ballarat or whether you're on the eastern side of Melbourne. So having that geographical spread does provide opportunities for a wider range of students. Let's jump into what academic areas Fed Uni is teaching and what it's really known for. So the strongest academic area, are clustered around a few key zones. Health is a big one, so we're talking about nursing, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, and allied health programs. These are all significant at Fed Uni. They all have clinical placements across regional hospitals and healthcare services. So if you're thinking of a career in health and you want hands-on clinical experience from early in your degree rather than sitting in lecture theatres, Fed Uni is worth a look. There are also advantages to going into the healthcare areas outside of major metropolitan capitals. There's so many opportunities for work and incredible placements out in Australia's regions. And that doesn't just go for Victoria, that goes for all of Australia. Now, anyone who's interested in getting into some of those health pathways, particularly in medicine and like, we've got a great session called Getting Into Medicine. It's held in conjunction with Mission Med, and it's covering that whole landscape, including the UCAT, the University Clinical Aptitude Test, and what you can do in order to pass that test. Okay, let's move on to something else. Engineering, IT and data science form another strong cluster for for Fed Uni. The Mount Helen campus in Ballarat has dedicated labs for civil, mechanical and materials engineering, plus connections to the Ballarat Technology Park, which is pretty much right next door. Now, that tech park isn't just like a name on a building. It houses real companies doing some cutting edge work. Things like IT and services. And if you get involved with those companies, you have internships, real project opportunities, and that's where those partnerships and the proximity to the university are a real advantage. Another one of the subject areas that is really important to Fed Uni is education, and it's really embedded in Fed Uni's DNA. And if we go back to the origins of the institution, actually began as a teacher education training institute. So if you want to be a primary or secondary teacher and you want to do your placements in regional schools, where, by the way, in terms of job prospects, there are so many shortages across regional Victoria, the job market for teachers outside of the major capitals is absolutely enormous. So going to a regional institution like Fed is a real advantage. It's logical to me that if you wanted to go and work in regional Victoria, or to get that experience in regional Victoria and eventually transition back into your preferred metropolitan destination, Fed Uni has an advantage. You're already connected in with those regional schools. Sport and exercise science is another area where the university is particularly strong, and research is also incredibly good. The ERA assessment, which is the National Research Quality Audit, has rated Fed Uni's human movement and sports science research at the highest possible level, which is well above world standard. The same goes for applied mathematics, it goes for environmental science, it goes for nursing, civil engineering, and clinical sciences. Incredibly, 80% of Fed Uni's research is rated at world standard or above, which I must say is pretty remarkable for a university which is regional and is this size. Now, just a quick word about Fed Uni's TAFE setup, which is something I mentioned just before. Fed Uni offers diplomas and advanced diplomas that articulate, and by articulate what I mean is that they feed directly through into bachelor's degrees. So if you're finishing year 12 and your ATAR isn't quite where you want it to be, you don't feel like you're ready for a 3-year commitment, starting in a diploma and then stepping into the second year of a degree without losing any time is a legitimate pathway for you. It's a legitimate strategy. So don't feel like starting off in TAFE is a consolation prize. Any kind of further education is really good for you in the long run. The data on that is absolutely unequivocal. And it's a pathway that literally thousands and thousands of students use across Australia every single year. There's another thing, and I think you're going to like this one, that Fed Uni is really good at, and that is scholarships. Fed Uni awards over 1,000 scholarships and grants each year, and that includes equity scholarships for students from low income or regional backgrounds. It includes accommodation bursaries, which means support, and for international students, it also includes Destination Australia scholarships, specifically for students studying in regional locations. So if cost is a factor in your decision, and let's face it, for a lot of people it really is, this is a place where financial support is real. And let's face it, if you're living in regional Victoria, the overall cost of living is significantly lower, not only from metropolitan capital like Melbourne, but think about Sydney. Sydney is extraordinarily expensive. Moving to a place like Ballarat or Gippsland gives you an opportunity of having a much lower cost of living and a completely different university experience. So I really think it's worth considering for the right type of person. So here's what I want you to pay attention to in the next section. Federation Uni's graduate employment numbers tell a very different story to what you might expect for a university that's sort of ranked the way it is and of its kind of nature. Student satisfaction sits in an interesting spot too. It's not the highest that you'll see in this Expo series, but the reasons behind that number really matters. So let's dive into those now. And once again, I'm going to be really straight with you about what these numbers are, what they mean for you. And the data comes from the Australian government's QUILT survey set. That's the Quality Indicators for Learning and Teaching. It's run by the Social Research Centre. I've got a whole session on that as part of this virtual expo, details in the session catalogue. And we also have some of the global data from QS and the Times Higher Education group. So let's jump into them. Student satisfaction. And Fed Uni sits at 76% in terms of student satisfaction overall. That's a touch below the national average. 3 out of 4 students having an experience that they're really satisfied with. It's not terrible and it's not outstanding. Now, for comparison, the highest rated universities on this measure, and that's Bond University and the University of Divinity, they sit in the high 80s. But satisfaction scores are complicated. They're influenced by exceptions. So expectations, not exceptions, expectations. So things like campus facilities and how well a student feels supported. A university like Fed that has a really high proportion of first-in family and regional students faces some unique challenges in terms of student satisfaction because, quite simply said, a lot of those students coming into the institution have no family history with higher ed. They don't know what to expect. So it's very hard to meet students' expectations when we don't know what those expectations are, or if those expectations have never been set in the first place. So honestly, I think that student satisfaction result is completely fine. When it comes to teaching quality, and this is a really critical one for me, the Good Unis Guide gives Fed University a #1 in Victoria rating for student to teacher ratio. Now that really translates into day-to-day meaningful measures. It means smaller tutorials, it means more face-to-face time with academics, and a better chance of getting the support you need. Now here's the one that I'm really chomping to get to give you the data on, because this is where, to me, Fed stands out in a way that is completely unexpected and delightful. Fed Uni's full-time employment rate for undergraduates is 80.8%. Now, that's solid. It's above the national average. But the postgraduate number is truly striking. 95.3% of postgraduate students who've completed their degree are in graduate employment within 4 months. It's one of the highest numbers in the entire country. And what that says to me is this idea around cooperative education, the fact that Fed Uni is out in the regions where demand for skilled work and highly skilled work is high, means that graduates get jobs. So I can now see why this is such an appealing institution for students from low socioeconomic backgrounds and who are first in family. You want to go to uni, you want to have the experience, and you want a job on the other side. Fed Uni is a top option for that. Let's dive a little bit more into those kind of graduate details. And when it comes to graduate starting salaries, Fed Uni sits at $71,000 for an undergraduate student as the median graduate starting salary. So that's the student right in the middle of the pack. After graduation, they earn $71,000. Now that's around about the middle of the pack for Australia, but it's actually higher than several of the Group of 8 universities. And the Group of 8 are the kind of the famous, prestigious sandstone, research-intensive institutions. Melbourne Uni graduates, for instance, have a median of $65,000. UNSW has $75,000. So Fed Uni, sitting at $71,000, is competitive. Part of that is driven by the fact that students going into regional roles in health and education and engineering, there's high demand for those jobs and the starting salaries are really good. But overall, Fed Uni is doing great on the employment side of things. Let's have a look at the world rankings. And I always like to make a little bit of a caveat around these global rankings, because if you're going to Fed Uni, chances are its global ranking probably doesn't mean a lot to you, to be very honest. And these global rankings are heavily influenced by things like research output, how much research the university does, how much that research is cited, looked at by other researchers, and international reputation. And let's face it, Fed University Australia hasn't got the kind of global reputation as an institution like the University of Sydney, Australian National Uni, or big international universities like MIT or University of Cambridge. However, the uni sits in the 500 to 600 band in the Times Higher Education World University Rankings, equal 33rd in Australia. So it's not a super good result overall, but for a regional university of this size, supporting the kinds of students that it does, with the amount of research that it turns out, it's basically what I'd expect. And so I wouldn't be overly concerned about that kind of overall ranking. What really matters to you, I think, if you're looking at Fed University, are things like the cost, the job opportunities, and what your experience at university will be like. And Fed is absolutely fine for all those things. Now let's think about how Fed Uni compares with other universities around Australia. And so, of course, if you're considering this university, you're probably looking at other universities at the same time. Sorry, one sec. So who might you consider Fed Uni with? Well, in Victoria, the institution that to me kind of feels most similar is Deakin University. And that's because of Deakin University's geographical spread. It, of course, has a campus, and it's actually a couple of campuses in Melbourne City, but also has a regional footprint down in Geelong, out at Warrnambool and at Warren Ponds as well. It also has, Deakin Uni ranks higher in terms of global rankings, and it has a really strong reputation for online and flexible study. Its student satisfaction is at 81%, give or take, versus Fed Uni's 76%, and its graduate employment is similar at 80%. Now, the difference is that Deakin doesn't have Fed Uni's dual sector TAFE pathway. It doesn't have that cooperative education model baked into every degree, and its class sizes are larger. But if you want more options, a bigger brand name, Deakin to me is like the obvious alternative. If you want an institution that's similar in terms of demographics and servicing like lower socioeconomic or first-in-family students, there are actually a couple of institutions in Melbourne that I think rank similarly. The first one is VU in the west of the city, also has a regional footprint as well, and shares some of the academic strengths that Fed University has. So VU, I think, is worth having a look at. And also La Trobe University. La Trobe, which is also has regional institutions and its main campus located in the north of Melbourne. It sort of shares Fed Uni's regional roots, its strong commitment to equity and access. And I think these are useful comparisons when it comes to thinking about what sort of institution has the same sort of profile, whether that's research, global rankings, and most importantly, these institutions that operate in sort of a same philosophical space. Now, La Trobe, for example, it has lower student satisfaction than Fed Uni at 73.8%, and its graduate employment is also a little bit lower. You can compare all of these institutions. In fact, the easiest way to do that is on the Choosing Your Uni website. We've deliberately built an independent platform that allows you to ask very specific questions comparing various institutions, fields of study, degrees, and institutions. It's all configured around your interests and goals and preferences. So it's not just powered by whoever's got the biggest marketing budget. Platform is completely free to use, and you can do that now. Details are in the session description. Now, the final comparison that I make, in fact, I might give you a couple of others, depending on if you're thinking about moving interstate or not. The first of the interstate options that I would consider would be Charles Sturt University in New South Wales. It's also based in the regions, and the institutional DNA is very, very similar. It's got super high rates of first-in-family students. It's got super strong graduate employment at 91.2%. It also has a dual sector approach, and degrees are built around professional placements. So if Fed Uni offers what you're open to, and you're interested, Uni offers what you're interested in, but you're open to looking beyond Victoria, to me, Charles Sturt is an interesting comparison point. Some of the other amazing regional institutions that we have in Australia that you would also potentially look at, places like the University of Southern Queensland also has exceptional graduate outcomes for students. Up in Queensland, on the coast, you have CQ University in Rockhampton, which has different specialisations, does have strengths in health and engineering, but also has other sorts of fields of study that aren't available at Fed University. CQ Uni, possibly worth a look as well. I've got sessions on all those institutions. You can check them out, of course, in the session catalogue below. That's it for this session. I'm running short of time. I do have some pre-submitted questions, and I like to get to these first just because people took the time to write in. But if I haven't gotten to your question in the chat, I will answer all of those in the Choosing Your Uni Discord or in the parent Facebook group. Details down below, of course. Firstly, this one came in, it's actually from a parent. Fed Uni based in Ballarat. What's the student life actually like in regional city compared to Melbourne? So Ballarat has a really wonderful culture. Lots of cafes, festivals, community activities, and it's also got a tight campus community. So I think that's a real advantage if you're looking to be a little bit more connected to community, to be very honest. So no, it's not a massive city. Things aren't buzzing 24/7. It's a slower pace of life in regional Australia. Is it bad that it's a slower pace of life? Definitely not. In fact, for some people, it's exactly what they need. So I highly recommend having a look at it if you're looking for that kind of experience. This one from a girl called Tegan is a degree from a smaller or regional uni taken as seriously by employers as one from a big city university. In most fields, and almost universally I'd say, the answer is yes. Employers want to know about your skills, your work experience, and how likely you are to fit in to their particular organisation. So having things like the co-op program at Fed Uni, which gives you real world experience, is an incredible advantage on a resume. The fact that there's a logo from a particular institution is far less important now than what you've done, okay? And what you've done isn't just a degree, it's everything else you do at uni. We've got a number of sessions all about life at uni, things like doing student exchanges and other parts of the campus life. The more you're involved in, the more you can get on your resume. It's not possible for everyone because of life commitments, work commitments and the like. But if you can, you will be rewarded for being involved in lots of stuff during your university experience. It's been great chatting with you today about Fed Uni. Once again, I hope to see you over in the Choosing Your Uni Discord to answer all those questions for you one-on-one, and I'll see you in one of the upcoming sessions. Have a great day. Well, I hope you got something out of this session, and if you have any questions at all, you can head to choosingyouruni.com and ask Lumen. Lumen is your AI guide who knows about every university, every pathway, every option that we've talked about throughout this virtual expo, and Lumen is available to talk to you 24/7, so it's ready when you are.